According to my sources, President Biden has agreed to step down as the Democratic nominee.
Oh,
It
man.
will happen as early as this weekend. A speech has been drafted for him.
President Biden has made his decision. He is the Democratic nominee.
The president has said that he is running, and it's the end of story.
Look, absolutely the president's in this race. You've heard him say that time and time again.
He has communicated to every Democrat in writing that he intends to continue this campaign.
I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Good luck with that.
The biggest question in the political world right now, besides how the Secret Service allowed a 20-year-old to shoot Donald Trump despite the fact that he was seen using a rangefinder and, according to the latest reporting, flew a drone over the rally site, is whether or not the President-in-Chief should drop out of the 2024 race. Now, obviously, if you are not a partisan hack and you're a human with a working brain, you know that he should, but the Democrats have really backed themselves into a corner with this one by lying for years about his cognitive abilities. There are many layers to this, with some Democrats fearing they will lose in their own race if Biden is on the ticket, while others are vying for the top spot that Biden currently sits in. This list has grown over the past few days, culminating with reporting by multiple different outlets that Biden has already accepted that he will be dropping out once a plan is put together as far as what to do moving forward.
According to multiple Democratic sources, this is happening all of a sudden. Everyone said it would happen gradually and then all at once, and that's what's happening. According to my sources, President Biden has agreed to step down as the Democratic nominee.
Oh, man.
It will happen as early as this weekend. A speech has been drafted for him. He will continue on as president, is his intention. He also will not, I'm told, endorse Vice President Harris as his successor. They're hoping that he will endorse an open process in which the convention will be open to Vice President Harris and a few other candidates in Chicago to pick the Democratic nominee for president. The belief is that Vice President Harris is already looking at potential running mates to go to Chicago with a full ticket, including one possibility, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, and perhaps the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro. Other possible candidates who are being talked about include Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, perhaps Gretchen Whitmer, and again, the vice president running. On the first ballot, the regular delegates would be allowed to vote under this agreement that's being talked about amongst the president and high-level Democratic officials. The regular delegates would vote on the first ballot. If there is no winner on the first ballot, the so-called superdelegates would be allowed to vote on the subsequent ballot. This decision was reached, I'm told, all of a sudden because of the high-level pressure from Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, and others, and as well as the decision of many of President Biden's top aides that there was no path forward for him, that he would not be able to win this election, win the general election. And therefore, he's stepping aside again as early as this weekend.
So, Mark, what are the political ramifications for a party that based much of their platform on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they're passing right over Kamala Harris, and he's not going to be endorsing her, according to your sources?
Now, according to my sources, he will say very nice things about her. They do not want what some of my sources have been calling a Kamala coronation, that the problem, in part, that they found themselves in was that President Biden was not seriously challenged for the nomination. I'm told by some of her people, I don't know that the vice president thinks this, but some of her people believe she will win this, that she'll choose a strong running mate, that she does have the support of many of the delegates who are Biden-Harris delegates, and that she can win this basically on her own. And at least one of her allies said to me, this is better. Better to not be anointed by Joe Biden, better to show independence, better to show with a strong ticket the capacity to win the nomination on her own.
Well, Mark, that said, though, you're very familiar with campaign finance laws. He has, 200 and 300 million in his war chest right now. I believe, in my understanding, is Kamala would be the only one who could absorb that and continue on the campaign. How's that going to work when all their big pocket donors have already pushed for that?
Well, there's all sorts of money, right? There's super PAC money, there's low dollars. The belief is that a new ticket will inject excitement into the party, and that both low-dollar donors and the big donors who in the last few days have sent a strong message to President Biden that they will not support his being the Democratic nominee. So there's a strong belief that with a new ticket that they can raise money from the big-dollar donors who can give and bundle hard dollars, can give super PAC money, as well as the small dollar donations, that they will come in to whatever the new ticket is, whether it's the vice president or not. If it is the vice president, most campaign finance experts believe she does get to keep the Biden-Harris money.
Another layer is that there are reporting deadlines in some states as early as August 23rd, which is immediately after the Democratic convention is scheduled to take place. So time is definitely not on their side with this one. If he stays in, unless we get a repeat or something similar to what happened in 2020, it's pretty clear at this point that the Biden-Harris ticket would be in some serious trouble going up against a Trump-Vance ticket. Even the majority of the Democrat voter base doesn't want Biden to continue the campaign, as seen with this poll here.
We have some new polling data from the Associated Press that reveals a staggering number of Americans want President Biden to drop out. 70% believe he should withdraw so that Democrats can pick someone else. That is stunning. But this is even more stunning. 65% of Democrats agree. Biden's been waiting for the numbers. Well, we have them. The nightmare poll comes as calls to ditch President Biden are back after quieting down in the wake of the assassination attempt against former President Trump.
The issue for the party is that outside of threats, blackmail, or other related tactics, the only thing they can try to do is convince the puppet president to bow out of the race and hope that he does so in the next week. If he refuses to drop out, they will then have quite the PR nightmare in terms of having to turn around and go from telling him to leave the race to publicly supporting him going forward as the nominee. One of the congressmen calling for him to drop out is Adam Schiff, who is also the likely next senator from California, which is especially ironic considering that this is how he was talking about Joe Biden's mental capabilities after special counsel Robert Hur said that a potential jury would view him as a sympathetic elderly man with a poor memory.
I want to refer back to your opening statement in which you said that you did not disparage the president in your report. But of course you did disparage the president. You disparaged him in terms you had to know would have a maximal political impact. You understood your report would be public, right?
I understood, based on comments that the Attorney General had made, that he had committed to make as much of my report public as consistent with legal policy and legal requirements.
And you could have chosen just to comment on the president's particular recall vis-a-vis a document or a set of documents, but you decided to go further and make a generalized statement about his memory, didn't you?
Congressman, I could have written my report theoretically in a way that omitted references to the president's memory, but that would have been an incomplete and improper report, and that it did not reflect my analysis.
You could have written your report with comments about his specific recollection as to documents or a set of documents, but you chose a general pejorative reference to the president. You understood when you made that decision, didn't you, Mr. Hur, that you would ignite a political firestorm with that language, didn't you?
Congressman, politics played no part whatsoever in my investigative steps.
But you understood nevertheless, didn't you, Mr. Hur? You cannot tell me you're so naive as to think your words would not have created a political firestorm. You understood that, didn't you, when you wrote those words, when you decided to include those words, when you decided to go beyond specific references to documents? You understood how they would be manipulated by my colleagues here on the GOP side of the aisle and by President Trump. You understood that, did you not?
Congressman, what I understood is the regulations that govern my conduct as special counsel.
And those regulations
required me to write a confidential report for the Attorney General,
which you knew would not be confidential.
My decision, and that is what I did, Congressman. I followed the rules.
You knew it would not be confidential.
I followed them.
You knew it would not be confidential, didn't you?
Sir, the regulations required me to write a confidential report explaining my decision to the Attorney General.
Which you knew would be released.
It was up to the Attorney General to determine
you understood it would be released, did you not?
Would be released consistent with DOJ policy.
You understood it would be released. You understood it would be released.
I understood from the Attorney General's public comments that he would make as much of my report public as he could, consistent with legal requirements and DOJ policy.
And you also understand DOJ policy that you are to take care not to prejudice the interests of the subject of an investigation, right?
That is generally one of the interests that DOJ policy requires that prosecutors respect.
And it was your obligation to follow that policy in this report, was it not?
It was also my obligation to write a confidential report for the Attorney General explaining completely my decision.
What you did write was deeply prejudicial to the interests of the president. You say it wasn't political, and yet you must have understood. You must have understood the impact of your words. You must have understood the impact of your decision to go beyond the specifics of a particular document, to go to the very general, to your own personal, prejudicial, subjective opinion of the president, one you knew would be amplified by his political opponent, one you knew that would influence a political campaign. You had to understand that. And you did it anyway. And you did it anyway. And let me just go Let me just go to some of the differences here between the president's conduct and Mr. Trump's. In the superseding indictment, on page 3, it says that Mr. Trump suggested that his attorney falsely represent to the FBI and grand jury that he did not have documents called for by the grand jury subpoena. You didn't find anything like that with respect to Mr. Biden, did you?
Congressman, I do not have the Trump indictment in front of me, but I need to address something that you said in your prior question. What you were suggesting is that I needed to provide a different version of my report that would be fit for public release. That is nowhere in the rules. I was to prepare a confidential report that was comprehensive and thorough of an explanation.
What is in the rules, Mr. Hur, what is in the rules is you don't gratuitously do things to prejudice the subject of an investigation when you're declining to prosecute. You don't gratuitously add language that you know will be useful in a political campaign. You were not born yesterday. You understood exactly what you were doing. It was a choice. You certainly didn't have to include that language. You could have said vis-a-vis the documents that were found at the university, the president did not recall. There is nothing more common. You know this, I know this. There is nothing more common with a witness of any age when asked about events that are years old to say, I do not recall. Indeed, they're instructed by their attorney to do that if they have any question about it. You understood that. You made a choice. That was a political choice. It was the wrong choice. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona. Did special counsel wish to respond to that final question?
Yes, Congressman, what you are suggesting is that I shape, sanitize, omit portions of my reasoning and explanation to the Attorney General for political reasons.
No, I suggest that you not shape your report for political reasons, which is what you did.
That did not happen, Congressman. That did not happen.
Burbank Congressman and U.S. Senate candidate Adam Schiff is calling for President Joe Biden to drop his re-election bid. In a statement to the LA Times, Schiff cited his serious concerns that the president cannot beat former President Trump in November. He lauded Mr. Biden's record as president and his lifetime of service, but says it's time for the president to, quote, pass the torch.
An additional thing to note here is that all of the Democrats calling for Biden to step down because he is too senile are also conveniently ignoring the fact that they are saying it's perfectly acceptable to have that senile man remain as president until his term is up. They could be using 25th Amendment threats behind the scenes, but as of now, I have not heard it reported anywhere that that has been floated. Nonetheless, the campaign is acting like it's business as usual, despite the fact that everyone knows behind the curtain it's complete chaos right now.
Can you first talk to us about whether the reporting in the New York Times and in other outlets is correct that President Biden is considering stepping off of the Democratic ticket?
The New York Times reporting is absolutely wrong, and it's been consistently wrong. The president has said that he is running, and it's the end of story. And so he was just out here in Nevada talking to the NAACP, and he is running his campaign along with the vice president.
President Biden has made his decision. He is the Democratic nominee. I said before, I don't know how many times we can answer this question. I don't know how many times President Biden can answer this question. He will be the Democratic nominee, and we will beat Donald Trump in November.
So what is the plan? Is Joe Biden still in the race? Does he plan to stay in the race? And if so, what's the plan?
Thanks so much for having me, Mika. And look, absolutely the president's in this race. You've heard him say that time and time again. And I think we saw on display last night exactly why, because Donald Trump is not going to offer anything new to the American people. He's the same person he was in 2020. He's the same person he was at the debate stage. He's the same person he is that is about himself and not about the American people. And Joe Biden is more committed than ever to beat Donald Trump. And we believe on this campaign, we are built for the close election that we are in, and we see the path forward. The president is the leader of our campaign and of the country, and he is clearly, in our impression and what we've built and in our engagement with voters, he is the best person to take on Donald Trump and prosecute that case and present his vision versus what we saw last night.
So Jen, what do you say to Democrats who say he can't win and that there are better candidates that can go out there and beat Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, look, of course, you know, I'm not here to say that this hasn't been a tough several weeks for the campaign. There's no doubt that it has been. And we've definitely seen some slippage in support, but it has been a small movement. And you know this, the reason is because so much of this race is hardened already. The American people know that the president is older. They see that. They knew that before the debate. Yes, of course, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are reassuring the American people that, yes, he's old, but he can do the job and he can win. And I think that that's really fundamentally what we're built for as a campaign. This entire campaign has been built for how close this race is going to be.
Has he 100% ruled out the possibility of leaving the race during the course of all of your conversations with him?
In my conversations with the president, he's been asking for input. He's been asking from all of us who talk to him regularly for advice, for counsel, for input on the polls, on the opinion of our colleagues. But he has communicated to every Democrat in writing that he intends to continue this campaign.
Is he even considering it, leaving?
Look, I think he weighs very seriously the input of those he trusts and admires, those who've served with him. And beyond that, I'm not going to get into the details, Wolf. I think he deserves the respect of being able to reflect on this moment. But I think after the tragic shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, he showed us what kind of a leader he is.
I think from the data, it's pretty clear, as I said in the letter, that the president is on a trajectory to not prevailing in the election. And I think it's telling that members of the January 6th committee, myself, Adam Schiff, Jamie Raskin, have all suggested that he step aside.
Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.
Antoine Luca.